right, so let's move over. Hello. So let's talk about this. So this is a very important subject. I cannot stress how important this is. But this is basically where it all starts. A lot of new players tend to beat themselves up about their hour. I heard this so much when Strive released, right? Because like when the game first came out, a lot of new players picked up Strive, or like they just came from Dragon Ball, or like, and that was their first fighting game, you know what I mean? So let's say, I've spent 300 hours in Strive, or whatever fighting game, and I still feel like I'm dog shit. I bet you a majority of new players have felt this way, or like in some degree. Like essentially what this translates to, I've invested a lot of time and I'm not where I want to be, right? This is essentially the point. This is essentially what they mean. This is something a lot of people feel, and not just in fighting games, but this is a subject that it goes a lot, like in a lot of ways. But with fighting games, it's something you can feel the hardest because there's not as much to really, what's the term I'm looking for? There's not a ton to like really save you in this, you know what I mean? Like in fighting games, you can't blame other people as much. I mean, you can blame characters, but like, I still know like there are people that will be like, yeah, the balance in this game sucks, I just won't play it. That's a whole different subject. But if you fit in that category, you're on notice. But like, really, you will never improve if you just blame other things, right? Like, you can blame other things, but no matter what, you're still gonna go through the same system as everyone else. We're gonna use Elden Ring a bit for a comparison here. In general, like, let's say you're a new player, right? Everyone has things they're good at and things they're bad at, right? So like, some players may like, their strength, 5 out of 10. Endurance, like 7 out of 10. Everyone has their sort of stat. I guess fate. What a lot of people tend to do is they'll initially go through it, running decks, and it's great. And then there comes to a certain point where maybe they need to up their charisma. A lot of people, instead of, messing with this here, they blame the system that it requires them to, adjust this. So like, let's say some people like execution, 10's like the crazy. Some people have really good like reactions, right? Neutral. There will come a point where when you're playing this game, you will need to, like, theoretically, maybe there's something you need to up your intelligence for. Maybe there's something you need to up your charisma for. Now, here's why I'm highlighting this. You cannot just expect raw hours to win you games. You can't expect raw hours to improve. In the same way, like, now, you're probably wondering, why am I correlating these two things together? The thing is, when you get to a certain point, how much hours you put into a game does not matter. Hours typically only contribute to a certain sort of strength, right? And hours can contribute to, right, from familiarity. It's all in familiarity. Everything will boil down to just you get more familiar with the system, it helps you know what to expect, how the characters play, and from there you can up those stats, right? Like, you can up these. So just like playing the game brain off no matter what, this isn't going to help you, right? This isn't going to help you too much past, like, you understand how this character works, you know what they're doing. So hours leads to familiarity, enabling you to break down the specifics of a character. It enables you to essentially make a strategy around their weaknesses and strengths. So hours is important, but you can see it's only 1/3 of the formula here. A lot of people think hours directly equals all that. Hours equals success equals bullshit. You can go so far without thinking because your brain will pick up on a lot of the recurring subject. Once you figure out how they function, you need to think more actively. A lot of people go to this point and they feel the improvement for, how long they've played. First 100 hours, you made huge improvements because you picked up on Soul does this, Kai does that. Basically, these sort of things are kind of traps to make you think like, this is how you can proceed, but it doesn't really work that way. Some people can just like go through like entire games and like brain off, just mash, but that's not common. And it's the same as this. This is why I opened up this discussion with this comparison, right? The higher you are with these stats, the more XP you need, right? So if your expectation is still in phase 1, where like, you know, you're autopiloting and you're letting the game, your brain, whatever, do all the work, then you know, it's not gonna really like, essentially phase 1, you don't really think that much at all. You basically just like autopilot and you just go with the wind, right? Then once you figure out how it functions, you have a plan, but it's kind of linear. It's kind of a simplified strategy. Then phase 3 is essentially you optimize around these situations and where they come up. Essentially, this means a lot of adaptation around situation. Essentially, you have this combined strategy that varies depending on like safety and the situation. In the chat, out of curiosity, has anybody here had these feelings? You know, I've spent so many hours and I still feel like I'm dog shit. Or I've invested so much time and I'm just not where I want to be. This is essentially entitlement to success, right? Even though you don't feel it, this is essentially entitlement to success. And this one, I've invested a lot of time and I'm not where I want to be. This is a more fair answer, but this is still, you still have some expectations. Because this is a very common thing. This is not like, you're not like done or anything like that. Essentially, this can be applicable to anything. Some people may say, I've spent 300 hours learning Japanese and I still feel like I'm dog shit. I'm gonna give you an example. In fact, someone brought up an interesting subject to me yesterday. They said they have a friend complains about the balance of Strive, but refuses to play the game, but refuses to step away from from Strive discussion. This kind of person has an ego. For competitive gaming, this person has essentially failed. Players, of course, like obviously when you talk about these games especially, right, there are players that just like Xrd or don't like Xrd, like they just like Plus Arm more. And same with like some Xrd players just like Xrd more than Strive. Those people are not who we're talking about. There are players that directly their impression of a game is dependent on their success of it. If they're like unsuccessful, they basically just say this game sucks. These two things are important to note because they basically have a wall, right? There's a wall blocking them from improving. Essentially taking ownership and realizing, one, in both cases that we're talking about here, this is entitlement, right? This is entitlement to success. One is essentially entitlement through perceived work. This is kind of the opposite, where they've done it for a long time, things have changed, then they essentially say like, it's not the game, or sorry, it's not me, it's the game. In both cases, essentially, they may have a mental block that they don't realize is the case. It's just they have this block from what their experiences are. You know what I mean? They have some experience that's made them feel that way. I'm gonna hit you guys with some hard facts, okay? If hours equaled success, our world would look a lot different in a variety of ways. If all it took to be good at something was to spend like just a huge amount of hours, you would have so many pro league players and so many pro Dota players or TF2 players or Counter-Strike. In no case can you really think, oh, it's a linear progression, right? There's no amount of linear progression in any of it, right? No one would say, oh, it's just like, you know, A, B, C, D. In no case is it ever like that. In no case, right? There's a lot more to it. And likewise, if balance is so bad, then why are like so many top players so consistent? Then that would just mean like a bunch of people are just like winning left and right? Like they just win. So here's the important thing. It's recognizing it, right? It's recognizing, in this case, well, I may have put 300 hours in, but I've learned improperly. I've not really focused on the things I want to learn. Why does 300 hours matter? It doesn't. I mentioned before in Xrd, I would say it took me at least maybe 10,000 hours to get to a point where I felt good in fighting games. 10,000 hours. That's across Plus R, Xrd, Rev 1, and then on Steam I still have 2,000 hours of Rev 2. 10,000 hours, yeah. Does that mean for you to be good, does that mean you have to do 10,000 hours? No. the reason why it took me so long is the same reason why this person feels the same way. Basically, you need to recognize like, well, maybe I feel obligated to get fast enough, or maybe I want something more out of it. Think about why you want more out of this. Do you think age can be a hindrance? No, in no case. I think the things that will hurt you the most with your age are not your age, but how badly you want to progress compared to other people. How to improve, how to actively improve, right? Our struggle here, this is a common, I'll give you the best example, neutral. So let's say we realize neutral is where we want to improve. So what does it mean to be actively thinking about improvement? Enforcing how you want to play over how you want to win. This is usually the best way to do it. So how do you do this, essentially? So I recommend write notes and check them frequently in casuals. So for example, I would write a note. Here's literally, in fact, I think I still have some of my old notes from when I played Exert 4 years ago. This is Soul vs. Johnny from June 10th to 2:49 p.m. So here's how I formatted my note. This is essentially how I wrote my own notes to do it. I personally always write them like this. I would always write them very like just direct, like do this. I know just block more sounds funny, but you have no idea. This is exactly what I was talking about. And if you remember in my, again, philosophy video, I talk about against Johnny, I realized I have to over-respect. This is essentially, you can see my evolution of thought process. This is also something that a lot of people in this bubble, this is where they struggle here. Let's get rid of this. When something's in a game, it's not our duty to balance it. We can't balance it. We can't change anything. All we can do is accept it and play around it, which is usually why I said this person has failed. If you had two people side by side, one that does this and one that essentially plays around it, the latter will always be a better player. And that's just because they will have more experience to essentially they've gone through things that are difficult. They have strategies for it. Even though something may be hard or like strong, they may be like, you know, this is just how it is. We work around it. We figure out strategies, right? So how do I implement this? So I will check my notes between every round to keep my mentality refreshed on what I want, what I'm looking for. This is active learning. This is kind of like a very, again, blunt way of doing it, but you can see what I mean. This part does not matter. Just because you will lose more trying to learn stuff doesn't matter, because that's what casuals are. The only thing you lose is you may have, you know, Timmy Turner 420 say, I beat Titty Sprinkles 2069, but who cares? They're entirely huge groups of players that may not ever improve in the same way that you are really trying to, you know what I mean? Like some players may learn to anti-air somewhat, but you know, they get overwhelmed frequently and then they forget how to. And usually that's a good case of someone who cares too much about winning. If they care about winning too much, they will have direct flaws where if they especially get stressed, they will never really be able to implement the things they tried to learn. Whereas like usually if someone anti-air like tries to jump at me in or out of tournament, in grand finals or not, I can anti-air them without thinking, right? It's just like a twitch. If you associate like winning and as like the goal, then if you get into a point where winning really matters to you, like in tournaments, or even if you play against someone that you really want to beat, then you will get inconsistent. What I'm advocating for is to make this intuitive to you. Whereas you do it like, you know, around like anything else, it may be a lot harder for you to consistently do. That's basically the point. So I hope that helped. This was our big little discussion. I've been teaching. You're welcome. I hope it helped.